What are the states doing about all those hidden donors? The billionaires hiding behind political nonprofits? Let's have a look at California.
How are Sacramento politicians selling Prop 30?
Most American election campaigns wind up with a barrage of negative ads.
There's no in-between.
Like this one in California, blasting Governor Jerry Brown's ballot proposal in 2012 for a tax increase to fund education. The fine print names the California Small Business Action Committee as sponsor, but voters are left in the dark about who actually forked up the money. It's dark money, and it's a huge problem in all 50 states. California fights dark money by requiring financial disclosure. So Common Cause activist Derek Cressman, checking an official state website, spots a sudden flood of out-of-state dark money.
We saw this contribution of $11 million, a huge amount, coming in from this group in Arizona.
The money came from a group called Americans for Responsible Leadership, never before active in California politics. But who's this group fronting for? Anonymous contributions are prohibited in California. So Common Cause files a complaint with California's election watchdog, the Fair Political Practices Commission.
And we asked them for a formal investigation.
Our reaction was just shocked at how large the $11 million contribution was.
Because it was the largest anonymous contribution ever in a campaign in California.
Commission Chair Ann Ravel is a new kind of sheriff. She wants fast action.
My immediate reaction was, yes, it was absolutely, we have to jump on it.
We felt it was incredibly important to make sure that the public had the knowledge before Election Day of who was contributing that money.
And the reason is that ballot measures are complicated, and knowing who's behind it, it's like a voting queue. For some people, they have voting queues whether they're going to vote for Republicans or Democrats for candidates. But for ballot measures, knowing who's funding them or who's behind it, those are voting queues.
But the time crunch is acute. Less than 3 weeks to Election Day.
We contacted the Arizona nonprofit. We got a call back from a major Washington, D.C. law firm. And truthfully, that raised our suspicion even more. Because this little nonprofit in Arizona had this big-time Washington law firm representing it.
The lawyer was Jason Torchinsky.
At 36, Torchinsky was already a Top Gun attorney on campaign law for big-name Republicans. Winnick tells Torchinsky that California law requires the Arizona group to reveal its funders, but Torchinsky resists.
So you get a stonewall from these guys, and you
That's right.
see this guy Torchinsky is connected with a lot of high-powered Republicans. What's your reaction?
My feeling was we need to take them to court right then.
At Sacramento Superior Court, Winnick and Torchinsky clash head-to-head.
You know, the purpose of the FPPC, Your Honor, is to enforce the law even-handedly, not to railroad someone into forcing disclosure.
So he and I both showed up in court. We were saying, if you want to boil it down to its essence, give us the records. Their response, in essence, was, you're not entitled to the records.
The judge orders the Arizona group to reveal its records within 24 hours. Torchinsky appeals to a higher court, forcing delay with time running out.
The clock is ticking, and the respondents are doing everything they can do to stall.
Ravel decides on an emergency appeal to the state Supreme Court. It's the weekend before Election Day. Unless the court acts, voters will go to the polls still in the dark.
The court met on Sunday by telephone, and they decided unanimously that Americans for Responsible Leadership had to submit to an audit of the FPPC by 4 o'clock that day.
So we get on a call Sunday night, 11:30, probably East Coast time. And so we get into a kind of heated discussion about what they're actually going to provide us. Let me say that on Monday morning, I had absolutely no idea what was going to be delivered to me.
Monday a.m., the dark money network comes out of the shadows, makes a series of revelations. Americans for Responsible Leadership reveals that it got $11 million from the Center to Protect Patient Rights. And the Center reveals that it got $11 million from Americans for Job Security. But the original donors are still a question mark. One stunning disclosure: these groups that were funneling money from one to another were part of the political network of Kansas billionaires Charles and David Koch.
These groups had ties to a fellow named Sean Noble, who was sort of an operative of theirs and knew how to move dark money around.
You could clearly see that the money was intentionally hopping from one nonprofit to another, all with names that mean nothing to anyone and no real charitable purpose, all for the purpose of concealing donors.
Winnick had stumbled into what Governor Brown calls a money laundering operation.
They had to launder this stuff 5 times. It was so dirty, and it still stinks.
Election day, the dark money side loses, but voters are still in the dark about who wrote the big checks. Armed with subpoena power after Election Day, Winnick tracks down 2 big-time California GOP operatives, Anthony Russo and Jeff Miller. They turn state's evidence, admitting they raised $29 million from rich Californians. For secrecy, they sent donations to the Koch group, Americans for Job Security, based in Virginia.
Why would the Koch Brothers network have so much appeal to the California political operatives?
The Koch Brothers network had a lot of appeal. They had a network of nonprofits all across the country. It was a great place to hide money.
It takes Winnick a year to piece the puzzle together and give voters an inside look into how dark money works.
And this is the flowchart we came up with. It went from individual donors to the Americans for Job Security to the Koch Brothers network.
In October 2013, Revel's agency lowers the boom, finding 2 Koch groups $1 million for violating California's law on disclosure. And it orders the California Small Business Action Committee to cough up its $15 million in dark money. When I ask for a comment, the Koch brothers' lawyer, Jason Torchinsky, declines. So do the 2 operatives who raised the dark money. But their attorney, Tom Hitalchek, does not dispute FPPC findings and says that secrecy actually backfired against the donors.
You know, I would argue that the controversy actually did more harm to the campaign that they were attempting to support than their money benefited. And so in hindsight, I think they would have been well advised to simply just come clean with who was the source of funds.
They hid the names of the true donors.
Individual donors escape disclosure through a loophole in California law. But for the financial audit, Winnick obtains a funding list with donor names blacked out, and the Los Angeles Times manages to decipher the names.
Investigative journalists, I guess, held the blacked out piece of paper up to the light.
The list is a shocker. Notables like Bob Fisher, chairman of the Gap, mega investor Charles Schwab, Los Angeles philanthropist Eli Broad.
The ringleader of this fundraising operation appears actually to have been Charles Schwab.
Schwab personally emailed Charles Koch asking for money and praising Sean Noble from your group for helping move the dark money. Koch loaned use of his network, but didn't contribute money. Despite her success, Ravel pushes to tighten California's disclosure law.
There were loopholes in the law that we needed to fix. And what we had to fix was the ability to audit prior to the election and the ability to really get disclosure from independent expenditure groups.
The measure passes.
In 2014, the legislature beefs up the agency's audit powers, closes loopholes, requires disclosure of the 10 top donors for any group spending over $50,000 in a California election. California's tough line against political nonprofits is a model for the country.
I think toughening the law is a deterrent and will make those committees think more carefully about what they do. Absolutely.